Hi, welcome to our second video in the UI Click project for our Create with Code curriculum. In this video, we're going to be making a score, a way to keep score as we click on good items and lose points whenever we click on these bad prefabs here. And we're also going to be making a canvas to hold that information, so a way to keep the scores above. So very useful stuff. So let's just jump straight in. At the very top of your screen, you might not be able to see it due to my recording, there's a little tab called Window. If you click on it, you'll see all these options. You'll see I already have something called Text Mesh Pro. That's because I've already downloaded it. I don't believe you will have this option, but if you do, great. If not, we'll go to your package manager, and it should pop up a new window. And currently, you might be in this tab where it says Packages in Project, and it will show all of the packages in your project. And the package manager controls this part of your game right here. And we add packages from the asset store or just download them in general in order to make sure that our game has everything it needs to run properly. So you can already see mine has Text Mesh Pro, it has a timeline, it has a collaborate feature, it works with the Visual Studio. These are already built into this. But if you don't have it, I'm going to go to All, and this has a list of stuff that we aren't using. There's a bunch of things that we could be getting. I really don't want you to add anything to this game that we're not ready for yet, because sometimes these can not work well with the way your game is set up. So instead, if you can go search down here for Text Mesh Pro, or you can search for it in the bar over here. I'm going to type in text, and there's Text Mesh Pro. And this is a UI text creator, so we can put words or font over our screen. And so I already have it, but if you don't have it here, hit import and it should pull up. So once you get that done, you're going to go over here to the hierarchy, and we're going to create down here in our UI, user interface, and we have a bunch of options. We can make buttons, we can make sliders, scroll bars, drop-down menus, input fields, so we can type in text and see, oh, did they say the right thing? We have a lot of options here. But you'll see that for our buttons, we have two options. Our drop-downs, we have two, our input fields, and our text. We're going to do a Text Mesh Pro text right here. Now, when you do this, if you haven't done it already, it'll ask you to import the essentials, and I will do that now. Great. You don't need to do the examples or extras. That's quite okay. So you'll see now in your game view, you will have a text object right here. I'm going to double click it here in my scene so I can see it. And you'll notice it is way out here, much bigger than what our scene is. And that's because this is a fixed object, almost like a piece of clear plastic that sits above our camera at all times, and our camera is then scoping down to see what's inside of our game view. So these are like on different levels, and this is sitting above it. I want to go ahead and call this object. I'm sorry. You also will notice that in the hierarchy we have created something called a canvas, and a canvas is this big white box where all of our user interface is stored. And if you look over here inside of the inspector, we have a bunch of options. We have some canvas controls here, and some of these are very useful. Some scaling options to make sure it fits on different size devices. And then all of our text and all this stuff will be children of the canvas. So let's go ahead and call this text, this TMP text object. Let's give it a new name. I'm going to call it score text. Press return. And I know that that is the name because I pressed return, and I can see it right there. And if I scroll down, you'll notice that there are a bunch of different options here. Before we start playing with them, though, let's get this thing in the right space. So if I click on it here in the hierarchy, I can use this move tool, the W on your keyboard, to move this around, which is fine. That works okay. But a better option is at the very top, you have this thing called rectangle transform. This is its position relative to the canvas. So if I click on this right here, middle center, this will give me a chance to just click and position this wherever my set anchor is supposed to be. What I like to do is hold down the Option key on my MacBook though, and this will now let me move my object around the screen. So you got to be holding down Option for this to work quite right. I'm going to go up into the upper left hand corner. That looks okay. I might need to scale it back and play with it some. This looks pretty good, so I'm going to leave it like that. And now we can see that my score text is in the top left corner. And you can play with these positions on the X and Y some if you need to kind of like get what you want out of this. But I like mine right there. And I will be changing the text and stuff so it appears a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead and just make this relatively the size that it's going to be. Like what I mean by the number of characters. So go down here, scroll down, and it says new text. I'm going to change it to score and put a colon there. And now we have a bunch of different options here. We can play with different fonts. So where it says font asset, you can click on this. And you only have a few. I probably have a couple more because I've downloaded some other ones. Indie Flower is a pretty popular one. I'm not sure if I have because I've downloaded or not, but go ahead and choose a font that you like. I'm going to go with, I kind of like this XO2, and that looks pretty good. The font size currently is, that's okay. I want to go ahead and show you this really quick. The fact that this is anchored in the upper left-hand corner. Let me take my game view and do this. Now that you see how the score has changed relative to the background, because I'm in a bigger screen. And if I stretch this, you'll see that it always goes to the upper left. That's because the canvas is staying the same, even if my game view isn't. So I just want to point that out, that's why I don't really mind, because I think most people will play this in full screen. I hit maximize on play. This is what it's really going to look like. Here, so my score will be up here. Actually, I probably might even want it a little bit larger. For now, this is going to be fine. So let's just stick with 36 on my size. And you can see that there's a lot of options. We can also auto size it, and it will just pick a size for us. We can change the vertex color. I will do that. That's basically just the color of our text. And I'm going to go with maybe like a gray. So I'm going to drag this down some. Maybe a little bit more on the wider side. And alignment. Bunch of options. So this looks pretty good to me. So let's move on to our next thing. So we want our game manager to control the score. And we want the game manager to keep count whenever we click on good items to add to the score, and then for the game manager then to update this text object to say, okay, your score is this. So let's go to our game manager script. And I am having to reopen mine. I've had to do some other work in between. But the game manager basically will need to pull information in and then kick it out onto this text object. Like we've done before, we've done with our scene manager, we've had to make a reference to it at the very top of our script. So let's do that now. So at the very top, after line 3, I'm going to press return, and I'm going to say using TMP Pro and put a semicolon. And this is so that the script note is looking for Text Mesh Pro and to use its specific actions or so on. So if we want to use this, we always need to make a reference to it, a variable to hold it. So I'm going to go to line 9, press return, and I'll make a public text mesh pro UGUI. UGUI, I like that word. And UGUI is the Unity Game Object User Interface. I don't want to get too deep into this, but basically the fact is we're treating our text as a game object. That's why it's in our hierarchy. Means that Unity sees it as a game object. So it knows to treat it as one with a transform and all that stuff. Text doesn't always have to do that. And let's give it a name. We'll call it score text. And give it a semicolon. Let's go ahead and also create a, so this right here this is the text itself, but we also need to keep the score, right? So, and the score is probably going to be an integer, like a whole number. So we will create a private integer, and we'll call it score. And when the game starts, let's set that to 0. So the game always starts at 0. So in our start method, I'm going to go to line 15. I'm going to put it just above. I'm going to say score is equal to 0. I'm going to initialize that. Done. And let's go ahead and make sure that our score text is equal to this. So I will say score text, and it's almost like finding its component. It's text. I think that's lowercase t actually. Text is equal to, and then this is a string. We already have so this is what we want this to say. This right here, this is going to update its text. So we're doing code to change what's in this field. So I'm going to say score, and I will put a little space there. That way it knows that there will be a space between this, plus whatever score is. So, which right now when the game starts it will be 0. So we should see a score of 0 if we press save right now. Let's go look. Give it a chance to compile. Right, press play, and we should see a score of 0. Oh, no reference exception. Object reference not set to a reference of an object. So let's see what that is. Sure, I didn't. Game manager at the start. Oh, it needs to know. I didn't set this to be. I didn't initialize it. We could do that, but you know what? Instead, let's just go ahead and just do it inside of the inspector. So I need to put score text here. That should fix that. Let's hope it does. There you go. And score is now set to 0. Great. That's why sometimes it's good to initialize things up here in your start method. I could just go ahead and set this equal to find something called score text in the hierarchy. Like go find a particular game object, but I'm not going to do that. Let's get in the habit of saving again. So I'm going to hit Command S. Going back into Visual Studio. So the next thing we want to do is make it so that this score isn't just 0, that we update this and the text at the same time. So we'll do that in a different method, a method that will control that. So I'm going to go down in line 29 for me, press return, and I'll make a void because this is not giving us any new information. It's just going to update something that already exists, which is our score text object. We'll call it update score. Oops, score. And it needs an argument. And create this here, create our method, brackets. And I'm going to take this, line 17, cut it and paste it in here. Now this hasn't done anything new yet, but we can use this to add numbers to this score. So it's going to be a whole number, and we'll call it score to add, which just means that every time we call this, it will be looking to add an integer. And then we haven't actually done that process of adding yet. So on line 32, press next. I'm going to say score plus equals score to add. There you go. So what's happening here is when we call update score, it will take the current score and add itself to score to add. And we will put that elsewhere. We'll say like every time you click, we'll make score to add +5 or something. And then this is now changing the text to do the same thing because score here is now this whole line on 33. Hopefully that makes some sense to you. And I'm going to go back into line 17 and we're just going to tell it to update score. Now it needs an argument. It needs to know. Right now we're going to say 0 and save that. So when the game starts, it is set to 0. It needs to know an integer here. And right now we're not adding anything when the game starts. Score to 0. A score to add is 0. So press play. And it'll look like it did before. It'll be set to 0. But one way to check to see if it is working is we're just going to do a test. And currently the only thing we have going on in the game is whenever we spawn a target, we can say, just go ahead and I'm just going to put it in here. I'm going to say update score. And whatever number we put inside here, this int score to add, is how many points everything is worth individually. So we'll just say 5. So every time we spawn a target, we'll add 4 points to our score, just to see if this is working. Press play. There you go. There you go. Oh, yep. Every time we make one, there you go. You're getting score going up. Great. So let's make it so that we add the score only when we click on or destroy these objects. So I'm going to go back into Visual Studio. Let's make this a public. And the reason why we're doing this is so that other scripts can see what is going on here. So our target script can now go and find our game manager script and find this method. Oh, did I save? Command S. So we want to say, let's just try to think this logically. Our target, every time this occurs, this on mouse down occurs, then we want to call into our game manager and update our score. I'm going to take out line 25 here, by the way. Delete that. We don't need that anymore. That was just a test sample. Save that. So if we're going to be looking at this reference, we've done this before. We're going to make our game manager into a variable. And this was on a test for you at one point. So we should not do this. I'm going to press return on line 15. It will be a public. Actually, I'll just do a private. I won't need this. And the name of the script, game manager, and give it a name. Game manager. I'll just call it game manager. Put a semicolon. And we will go find it. And our start method. I might just put this at the very top. So line 16. And we'll say game manager is equal to finding, we're going to go look for this game manager object and then finding its component, the game manager script. So game object dot find game manager. Actually, I have a space in between my game and manager here, so I'll put a space there. Period. Get its component, and the name of the component is game manager, which is the name of the script. And you put an argument at the end. So this will go find this automatically without me trying to do an inspector. And that's it. We will then, inside of our this method right here, whenever we click mouse down and it hits a target, line 38, we will say game manager dot update score, and then it needs to know how many points to add. We're going to add 5. So save that. So I deleted it here. That's great. So let's see if that works. We should add 5 every time we click on any target. Now it doesn't know the difference between good and bad. Got it? Got it? Got it? Got it? Oh, I didn't. I'm doing terrible. There you go. But I can see it now. I might need to play with, might just cheat and make my colliders a little bit bigger. So great, we're adding up 5 points every time we click on our targets. And then we're going to the game manager and saying, hey, update our score by 5 points. So in order to make it so that each of these have different point values, we can just add this onto our target. Our target script is what's on all of our targets, and we can just make a variable, a public variable that will let us know how much each one is worth. I'm going to get in line 13, make it sure it's public, and it's an integer, and we can call it point value. And I'm not going to initialize it here because I'm going to do this in the inspector. So I'm going to save this, and let's go into our prefabs. I want to make it so that these good items are worth positive points and the bad item is worth negative. So I'm going to go to good one, and I'm going to open the prefab. And now on the script it has a point value, and now it says it's worth 0. Let's make this one worth a positive 3. And I'll make mine good too. You can choose whatever points work for you. Of course, balanced points that are relatively close to each other, make the game a little more interesting. I'll make the green one worth 4. And then I'll make the steak worth 5. And let's make the skull worth a negative 10, since it's pretty easy to hit, and we want to discourage that. Now, this still won't work right now, because even though we've made, let me just press play so you can see, even though we've given them all different values, can I hit anything? I'm still inside of my script, in my target script, still updating the score by 5. When instead, I want to update it by its point value. So down here on line 40, we'll say whatever the point value is on this. That's what I want you to update by. And save that. And that should make it now, whatever number we put on the prefab, it adds that many points to the score. Not too bad. Negative 10, no. There you go, negative 7, negative 17. Oof. Actually, the apples are pretty hard to hit. Might need to play with that range. But yeah, it's working the way we want it to. I think one more kind of cool thing to add is either we can add an audio clip when we click, or a particle effect. So let's just do a particle system really quick. We'll do this every time we hit one of these targets. So I'm going to go back to my target script. And we've done this before, but let's try it. Let's go to line 14. We need a reference to it. So we'll create a public particle system. And we'll just call it explosion particle. And you can choose whatever variable name works for you, as long as it makes sense. And we'll need to call this. I'm going to save this. But how about every time we click on them, let's instantiate one of those particle effects. We could just play it, press play like we've done before, but that means it would have to be playing all the time. We'd have to stop and start it. Let's just instantiate it. It's already a prefab inside of our folder. So in course library, you have a particles, and there's a bunch of different ones in here. They're all prefab, so long as we just instantiate those. So I'm going to go back into Visual Studio, and I'm going to instantiate. And the instantiate needs to know 3 things when we do it like this. It needs to know what, where, and rotation. So the thing we want to make is our explosion particle. And where we want to put it, well, it's on the target's transform by position, where our particle is. Where our target is. And we also want to just have it, let's have it have the rotation of the explosion particle, whatever that is. dot transform dot rotation. Okay, save that, and that will update our target script on our prefabs. So open prefab, and we'll see that we don't have a particle system assigned to it yet. So let's do that. I'm going to lock my inspector. Oh, bless me. Going into my course library, particles. I can kind of see, if I click on it, you can kind of see a small description of it. This is a black explosion, blue, brown, green, gray, orange, pink, purple, red. I might just do red, try to get something close to its native colors. Let's go back to prefabs. Green, lock it in. Oh, you know what, not lock it in. Open prefab, lock it in. And let's put a green particle effect on this. Done. Let's do the next one. What would stake be? That's a good question. Maybe brown, pink. I'll go with pink. Kind of flesh colored. Unlock that. Go back into our prefabs and get our skull. And maybe that should be black. Let's open the prefab. Lock that in. And go to particles. What do we have here? Black. Dragged it in there. Great. So that should now instantiate one of these prefab particles whenever we click. Nice. Feels a lot better. If I can click anything. Boom, that feels a lot better. I want to click one of these skulls. I don't know why I'm missing them. I'm absolute garbage. There you go. That looks a lot better. That looks like a more interesting game. Great, so that will be the end of this video. For the next time, we're going to be building a way to make it so our player can restart the game and just to say game over on the screen.